My name is Megan Ross, and my brother struck me across the face at my wedding. It was no accident. It wasn't a careless move fueled by too many drinks. It was a punch sharp and intentional that hit my cheek with a sound I will never forget. One moment I was holding my vows. The next I was stumbling backward, my head ringing, my veil falling off my shoulder. The entire lawn fell silent. Somewhere behind me, a juice glass shattered on the stone walkway, the sharp noise echoing through the hush. Guests stood frozen, mouths open, eyes shifting between me and Tom as if needing permission to believe what had just happened. The music played on for half a beat before stopping too late, as if it refused to join the horror it had accompanied. I remember the burning spreading across my face, the heat beneath my skin, and the metallic taste of blood filling my mouth. My veil caught on my heel as I tried to steady myself, nearly tripping over the dress my late mother had chosen. My grandmother gasped so sharply it cut through everything, and absurdly, I thought maybe my lipstick had smudged. Tom's eyes stayed fixed on me, cold and fierce. He didn't stagger or slur. He looked like he had just proven something to everyone watching. My husband, Alan Vert, moved toward me in an instant, but all I could feel was the heavy, unbroken silence pressing down. That's the reality of violence. The sound is quick, but the silence that follows consumes everything. 70 people stood motionless, some watching, some looking away, but none acting. I was the bride, white silk and lace, cheeks swollen, mouth stained with blood. No one knew what to do. I didn't cry or scream. I just stood there stunned and humiliated, my heart pounding wildly. I scanned the crowd, hoping someone would step in, but only frozen faces and whispered questions met me. The shame cut deeper than the pain. And then the realization hit. Tom hadn't just ruined the joyous day. He had done it in front of everyone we knew. The guests were not just witnesses to a wedding anymore. They were witnesses to betrayal. Why? Why would my own brother raise his hand against me on the day I should have felt safest? That question echoed through the silence, louder than the punch itself, demanding an answer I wasn't ready to face. Growing up in a military family meant discipline and appearances were everything. Dad wore his uniform like a second skin. Mom kept the house spotless as if order could erase the exhaustion etched on her face. Tom thrived in that world, loud, confident, exactly the son they wanted. I was quiet, always watching from the sidelines, the daughter who blended into the background. When Tom scored goals or earned praise from teachers, they clapped loudly and told him he was destined for greatness. When I brought home good grades, they nodded politely and told me to keep working hard. The difference was subtle at first, but grew heavier each year until I learned to expect less. Tom basked in the spotlight, while I learned how to stay small so the imbalance hurt less. At home, his brightness turned sharp. He took my things without asking, tore my covers at night, pushed me just enough to remind me who ruled. If I cried, he laughed. If I stayed silent, he sneered and called me weak. My parents never intervened. They called it sibling rivalry and told me to toughen up as if silence was armor. So, I adapted. I stopped complaining, asking for help, or expecting fairness. I kept my head down and voice low, hoping for peace even when it didn't come. I told myself surviving in silence was safer than fighting battles no one would see. That pattern stayed with me far longer than I wanted. As we grew older, the gap between Tom and me widened and sharpened. I built my life through education and hard work, carving success that didn't need applause. Tom clung to stories of combat, medals, and authority demanding recognition. At family events, he boomed about missions and danger, and everyone leaned in, as if only he mattered. When asked about my career, he often interrupted with jokes that belittled me. He called my achievements technical and boring, as if brains mattered less than brawn. Once, after my fundraiser presentation, he laughed to a group. Didn't know PowerPoint was service. They laughed with him. I forced a smile, feeling the familiar weight of dismissal. The truth was, I never wanted to compete with him. I just wanted space to exist without comparison. But he couldn't handle it. Each confident word I spoke tightened his jaw like I was stealing something from him. He kept a ledger of my mistakes, retelling them as cautionary tales to remind me where I belonged. I understood by then, it wasn't about me failing him. It was about him refusing to see me as anything but a rival. I stopped expecting closeness, but resentment only grew. What began as sibling rivalry had become poisonous. A reminder that my strength made him feel weak, a burden he never forgave me for carrying. I met Alan during joint training in a place that felt more punishment than preparation. The air was dry, the ground cracked, tempers thin. Most filled the space with noise, trying to prove strength through volume. Alan was different, quiet, steady, noticeable without demanding attention. The first time I truly saw him, I was bent over a dusty map, brushing off sand lines while men argued loudly. Alan stood at the edge silently watching. Then he stepped close and said softly, "You're the only one actually looking at the map." He didn't smile or explain. He just waited until I looked up. In that moment I felt seen. That was him. He never competed for space, but space bent toward him. When others shouted and bragged, he stayed calm, unsettling those who relied on intimidation. He never barked orders, but when he spoke, everyone listened. It wasn't about power, it was presence. His stillness held more weight than outbursts. One evening after fieldwork, a group gathered around a fire drinking rationed coffee and telling empty stories. Alan sat apart, quietly sipping from a dented cup. I offered him half of a protein bar I'd forgotten. He accepted it without ceremony, as if I'd given him something rare. After a long silence, he asked, "What do you miss most about peace?" "Not home, not future plans peace." Startled, I thought, then said, not looking behind my shoulder. He nodded once. "That's a good one." He didn't fill the silence with small talk. The moment lingered because it was enough. From then on, I noticed him more, how carefully he studied a room before speaking, how he never mocked or interrupted. His restraint wasn't weakness, it was control. Around him, I felt no need to defend myself. I could just be. That feeling of safety was something new. Alan was everything Tom was not. Where Tom demanded dominance, Alan gave steadiness. Where Tom shrank others, Alan made space. It wasn't a show, it was who he was. In that calm, I found a place where my voice mattered, not because it was loud, but because it was mine. That was when I started to grasp what it meant to be protected without conditions. The garden was transformed into a dream. White lanterns hung from trees, swaying gently. Rows of chairs curved toward an arch wrapped in magnolia blossoms. The stone path gleamed under late afternoon light. My dress trailed behind me as I walked, every step drawing me closer to a lifelong promise. Guests shifted in seats, smiling, whispering, snapping photos as soft music played. My heart raced with nervy joy, the thrill of standing at the beginning of everything. Alan stood at the altar, steady and calm, anchoring me as I took in the faces gathered. For a few minutes, the world felt whole. Then Tom arrived. 15 minutes late. Uniform pressed, but his flushed face and smell of alcohol shifted the atmosphere instantly. He walked the aisle like it belonged to him, drawing gaze away from me and my vows. Unease rippled through the crowd, but silence held. A tight knot formed in my chest, a warning the peace was already slipping. I had just opened my mouth to speak when Tom stood from the second row. His stride was sharp, deliberate, jaw clenched like going to war. Before I could react, his fist slammed into my cheek. Pain spread, forcing me back 2 steps, nearly tripping over my dress. The sound of flesh hitting bone echoed louder than music, gas or shattering glass. The garden froze. 70 people stood silent, eyes wide, breath caught. I tasted blood, felt heat swell under skin, but the heavier weight was shame. The bride struck down in front of everyone who came for love. Alan moved instantly, stepping between us with a stillness more threatening than any shout. His gaze pierced Tom, cold and exact. His words landed like steel. "Face the wall. You assaulted an officer." No one moved, not even Tom. His face flickered disbelief, then panic as the weight settled. The crowd stayed silent, watching his authority crumble instantly. Alan's calm command stripped him of power more completely than any blow could. Tom stood humiliated, exposed in front of every guest, and for the first time in my life, I saw him without the shield of respect he always demanded. The ceremony didn't end when Tom was led away. It ended in a silence, so heavy it pressed against my chest. I stood at the front with a throbbing cheek, torn dress hem, and 70 pairs of eyes locked on me. Some stared openly, others looked down, a few whispered as if trying to explain it to themselves. I thought anger would come first, But instead clarity came, the sharp kind that follows a broken illusion too loud to ignore. My brother had shown everyone what I had long known in quieter ways. Now no one could pretend. Shame was there, yes, but so was strange relief that the truth had surfaced. Alan never left my side. No rushing questions or speeches about being strong. He just stood close, hand brushing mine until I finally took it. That touch anchored me more than any words. Around us, guests fumbled. My aunt pressed hands to her mouth. A toddler cried. A man from Dad's unit coughed, looking away as if ignoring made it less real. Some stepped forward, then retreated when no one else moved. Unity vanished, replaced by fear of taking sides. I could have walked away. I could have demanded the ceremony stop. Instead, I turned to Alan and whispered, "Do you still want to?" He nodded without hesitation, and together beneath the crooked arch, we spoke our vows. They weren't polished or smooth, but they were true. Later at the reception, people hovered around edges. Some gave apologies they didn't owe. Others left early. Food went untouched. Music felt hollow. But Alan stayed close. He didn't try to make the day normal. He just stayed. That night, after everyone left, I sat with a cold compress on my cheek. Alan poured 2 glasses of water and handed me one without a word. We sat side by side, shoulders touching, breathing together. My body ached. But in that stillness, I understood something I'd never felt for the first time. I wasn't alone in the aftermath. Healing had begun. In the year after the wedding, I learned silence doesn't stay fixed. It grows, spreads, and shields the wrong people. For months, I lived in the shadow of that day, carrying the bruise that faded on my skin, but never in memory. Then, one by one, women came forward. Colleagues, subordinates, women who had worked under Tom's command. Their stories weren't mine, but the pattern was the same. Public charm, private control. He undermined, threatened careers, chipped away confidence until they doubted themselves. None spoke before for fear of disbelief. Sitting with one woman, I listened as she trembled through her story, seeing my younger self in her. I slid across copies of the incident report from my wedding. "You're not alone," I told her. Her shoulders relaxed with relief. Words spread. Others added voices, and soon testimony became too heavy to ignore. The military postponed Tom's promotion, put him under review. The man who once commanded rooms now faced collapse. His power lived in silence, but silence was gone. For the first time in years, justice breathed through the cracks in what he had broken. Not revenge, not triumph, but truth. I realized then that silence is how men like him survive, and breaking it is how they fall. The price was high, but the story was no longer his to control. When Alan and I left the military, it didn't feel like defeat. It felt like stepping out of armor worn too long. We moved to a quiet town where mornings were slow, the air smelled of pine, and nights were filled only with crickets. For the first time in years, I could hear my own thoughts without orders or rank weighing on me. Our house was simple, with a wide porch catching evening sun. Alan built a small shed where he worked with his hands while I found my place helping veterans and their families. I'm not a therapist, but I know how to listen. I understand the silence of those carrying too much, and I am able to sit with their pain without rushing it away. Every story reminded me that healing isn't about erasing the past, but about learning to live with it without fear. 2 years later, I returned to the garden where my wedding had been broken. The magnolia tree still stood, heavy with blossoms, and the stone path curved the same way. But the chairs were gone. The crowd was gone. And this time it was just Alan and me. I wore a simple dress, no makeup. We spoke quiet vows, not for an audience, not for approval, but for ourselves. As we walked along the back fence, I placed my hand on the rough wood and felt no fear. The ghosts of that day no longer haunted me. I looked at Alan, steady as always, and felt peace settle inside me. I smiled, took a deep breath, and whispered the words I had waited years to say. This time, I am free. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button. For more gripping revenge stories, make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you next time with another powerful story.